Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Thanks for joining us. Well, financial education is critical during the pandemic and inflation, but first we have important elections coming up on May 17.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
All right, we have some important topics to take up on a television show this week. We have John Micek. He's the editor-in-chief from Pennsylvania Capital Star, and Charlie Thompson. He's Harrisburg Patriot News PennLive reporter. All right, Charlie, let's start with you. We have an important U.S. Senate election that, who knows, could decide Senate control in the United States Senate. We have a governor's election. Both of them are open seats. So let's focus first on the Senate election and the Republican contest. Boy, you can't turn on TV. You turn it on, what do you see?
They've hit my demographic. They've hit my demographic very well, because every show I watch, I'm seeing David McCormick ads or Dr. Oz ads, and I know that Carla Sands is out there on certain channels with ads, and the most noise so far has come on the Republican side of the ledger. Everybody's running to succeed Pat Toomey, who had announced a year and a half ago that he was not going to be seeking election for anything this year and is going to leave office. So you have three people who have recently relocated to Pennsylvania from big lives elsewhere to try to jump into the electoral fray here. Yeah. Dr. Oz, David McCormick, a hedge fund magnate from Connecticut, who actually does have some bona fide Pennsylvania roots. His dad was chancellor of the state system.
President of Bloomsburg.
And Carla Sands, who also grew up just down the road here in
Former
Camp Hill.
actress, briefly.
Yes. And she became the ambassador to Denmark in the Trump administration. And they are battling against Jeff Bartos, who has been doing it the old-fashioned way, living in Pennsylvania and getting to know the party.
Whoever thought we'd say old-fashioned way?
Well, yeah, but he was our the Republican Party's lieutenant governor nominee in 2018, and built his credibility with the state party people over these last 4 years, and he's making a go for the Senate race. And then there's Kathy Barnett, who is a conservative commentator ran for Congress 2 years ago and grabbed some.
John, is this unusual? I mean, this is totally unusual. You take a look at the backgrounds. I mean, they have every right to run. I'm not suggesting they don't. But typically you'd have people who are members of Congress, running for the Senate or governor. You'd have people who are in the row offices, state treasurer, auditor general. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will say, Terry, just to the ad wars, there's something shockingly appropriate about these spots appearing between ads for high blood pressure medication and and heartburn, because certainly it's going to be a high pressure campaign. But once Republicans decided that they could elect a former reality TV star as president of the United States, it sort of kicked down the doors for people with non-traditional backgrounds. You have a television physician, you have a former actress in Ambassador Sands, who has obviously some diplomatic bona fides now. You have Mr. McCormick, a hedge fund zillionaire from my home state of Connecticut, but with legit Pennsylvania ties, as Charlie points out. Republicans have been coming particularly hard at Dr. Oz, whose ties to Pennsylvania are the most tenuous out of all of the carpetbagging candidates. He lives in New Jersey, kind of sort of might have a place in Montgomery County with his in-laws. And they've been coming particularly hard at him, particularly from David McCormick. Meanwhile, you got Jeff Bartos, who is on the air all the time stressing his bona fides.
And we don't want to lose sight of the Democratic race, because that's going to be a showstopper before it ends too, and that is Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman versus the congressman who is running for Senate, which is Connor Lamb from Western Pennsylvania.
And Malcolm Kenyatta.
State rep from Philadelphia.
I think you would agree, they're probably the three favorites if they're with so many voters still undecided. I would say they're probably the top three. Would you agree with that?
On the Democratic side?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more of a top two, and then Malcolm in a distant third, but making some noise in the progressive lane. Now, I will give a shout out to Dr. Kevin Baumlin. He's a minor candidate from Philadelphia that I had an interesting chat with earlier this week, and smart guy, but clearly struggling to.
There is still a vast
pension.
underticket that are running in these two primary races. But we've been talking about these top tier candidates, but we would be remiss, as Charlie points out, if we did not point out the fact that there are still a lot of sort of minor candidates who are vying for voters' attention in the midst of all this.
Yeah, Terry, these primaries are going to be heavy duty and rock'em sock'em probably until the end, and then that's just going to
and there's no clear. There's a huge
election.
number of voters who are undecided, so it looks like this could go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing on the Democratic side sort of the numbers going in Lieutenant Governor Fetterman's direction at the moment, with Connor Lamb a close second, but there's still a huge swath of undecided voters. Same on the Republican side of the ledger.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, we're going to take up the governor's election briefly, and we have some other topics to take up with these journalists after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented
Really
by
English,
the
Malcolm was.
Pennsylvania Chamber of
You're right,
Business
we
and
may have to
Industry,
was
more
the
in the-
statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, John Micek, we also have an important governor's election. As was previously mentioned, a guy named Tom Wolf is term limited. He can't seek a third term, particularly obviously we don't have to talk about the Democratic side. Tell our voters why.
Attorney General Josh Shapiro from Montgomery County effectively running unopposed for the Democratic nomination. Democrats putting all of their eggs in his basket as their standard bearer for 2022. The same cannot be said, Terry, of the Republican side of the ledger, which is kind of like a traveling company of Godspell. You've got Jake Corman, the Senate President pro tempore. You've got Doug Mastriano, state senator from Franklin County down near the southern border of the state. Lou Barletta, the former Republican congressman from up in Hazleton. Bill McSwain, the former U.S. attorney from Philadelphia. There is a Montgomery County, Joe Gale from Montgomery County, Sean Gale, which is a Joe Gale from Montgomery County.
Right, Dave White.
And Dave White from Delaware County, council member and businessman, is also running. So there's some new polling we saw just the other day that kind of put Mastriano and Barletta at the head of the pack, but there is still a large swath of undecided voters as we head into the thick of the primary campaign. And again, just as we said a minute ago with Charlie, this is going to be a big bucks race. There's going to be, the candidates are already on the air. They're already slapping each other around. So it's going to be really interesting to see who emerges from that fray.
And we have half of March, all of April, and half of May to go until we actually vote, right?
Yeah. A lot of people have probably not even realized what's on the ballot yet this year, except for the fact that they have these commercials airing on their nightly news.
Yeah. All right, well, look, let's turn to another subject, and that's Pennsylvania's response to the Russian invasion. Governor Wolf, in particular, John Micek, has stepped in. He's weighed in on this and, been very firm about how he wants the state to help the Ukrainians.
Yeah, I mean, the governor held a press conference a couple of days ago saying that the state stands with Ukraine, that he wanted the state to get out of its Russian entanglements. The first step was to pull 2 brands of Russian vodka from the shelves of Pennsylvania's state-owned liquor stores, which is not a lot, but, in the midst of things, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, you start talking about real money because the sanctions are piling up and other states are doing the same things. Charlie can talk about this other stuff. State treasurer and pension funds have also made their own moves.
Go ahead, pick it up.
Yeah, our major public pension funds in Pennsylvania, one that covers the state employees and one that covers all the public school educators across the state, have begun the process of divesting of any investments that they have in Russian companies. And that amounts to about $300 million between the two funds, which is less than a percentage point of all their holdings, but nonetheless, it's what they can do to be on what they perceive to be the right side.
49 other states weigh in, we're beginning now to talk about something that...
Well, that's right. I mean, that's the thing. It's like this cascading effect that we don't know if... the national and international commentators I've seen have said that Vladimir Putin never expected this kind of a unified response, including things like McDonald's and Starbucks and everybody else closing operations. So that's that. House Republicans earlier this week asked for, they took the opportunity to say this would be a moment when we should try to scale up our natural gas production in Pennsylvania. And they're calling for things like an end to the Wolf administration's moratorium on any new leasing of ground for Marcellus shale fracking and that sort of thing. They would like to use COVID relief to build up carbon capture technology and methane reduction technology. A lot of things that would be favorable to the gas industry for the future.
And Jake Corman with the gas tax holiday.
Oh,
just the other day as well.
Gas tax holiday. All right,
so people are looking at policy things that can A, help our industry, and B, help our taxpayers while supporting the Ukrainians.
All right, we're going to talk about financial education, which is critical during the pandemic and inflation, and we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by CrossState Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, joining me now to talk about how critical financial education is the Treasurer of the state of Pennsylvania, Stacy Garrity, and Patrick Conway. He's the President of the CrossState Credit Union Association. Patrick, let's start with you. We have the pandemic, we have inflation. Financial education could not be more important in terms of the finances with people, correct?
That's correct, Terry. Financial education is always critical to the economy, to families all across the Commonwealth, but never more so than now. We've been in this pandemic now for 2 full years.
Right.
As you said, inflation is soaring. Unemployment is still high. And, it's been an interesting time with all the stimulus money that came out and people dealing with the future and the uncertainty still that we're in. Financial education is more important than ever.
And we also have this situation where we have young people with credit cards, young people with saying they want to learn more about money and what to do with credit. I mean, so many more young people than in the past are getting involved in the financial aspects of life.
They are. That's a great point. And of course, we should mention that we're coming up on Financial Literacy Month, which is April. So this is very timely, Terry. But of course, Pennsylvania is heavily encouraging people to save for their education. You're very familiar with the PA 529 program, I know personally. Also PA Able to help people with disabilities. Also, we have a number of programs to promote financial literacy as well.
Yeah, I want to come back to you and talk about that more specifically, but we also have a situation where we have student loan and student loan debt that just adds to the situation. When you start out in debt, it's not like you're in middle age or in your latter years, but when you start out with that creates other kinds of financial problems.
It really does. And I have 2 college kids. One's graduating from Pitt this year, and one's a freshman at Alabama. And we talk about this in our household all the time. These young adults come out of college with these massive loan debts. And a lot of times they're not really educated on, how to plan for the future and how to deal with that debt. And frankly, they're not hearing that much at home as much as they should be. Schools are teaching it to a degree. More of these young adults hear about it at home, but not enough. Oftentimes people don't talk enough about financial education with their kids.
All right, Treasurer Garrity, you have this program called, and I'm reading it, PA 529 College and Career Savings Program. What's that all about?
Yes, so the PA 529, and I know that you personally have accounts. Am I correct?
I think so.
You do. And so what I like, it's to help people save for education, their families. And I like to stress it's not just for a four-year degree. It's also for community college. It's for technical schools. It's for qualified apprenticeship programs. And there are just tremendous tax advantages. So the tax-free investment growth, the contributions, the qualified withdrawals. It's exempt from Pennsylvania inheritance tax, and it doesn't impact a student's financial age eligibility in our state.
Yeah, you know, we normally don't think of tax benefits that come out when we deal with financial education, correct?
That's correct.
And that can make also a big difference in terms of how this is all perceived.
It really can. And I also want to mention that our program is extremely flexible, so it can be passed on to other siblings, half-siblings, grandchildren, cousins, nieces, and nephews.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about the assistance that folks can get, obviously, from credit unions. And I also want to talk about something I know that you think very important. That's, again, something else you don't think about, the amount, the number, and the value of unclaimed property. And we'll get to those subjects after this break.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
All right, let's talk about resources to help people. Patrick, it's your turn. Take it.
Sure. Thank you, Terry. You know, there's a lot of resources available in the Commonwealth, particularly for high school students. Credit unions in particular have been very involved. We're involved in 285 school districts across the Commonwealth. There's 54 in-school credit union branches that allows high school students to roll up their sleeves and really get involved in financial services. You know, our volunteers are also doing financial reality fairs in schools, which is a fun way for kids to really learn about how to manage finances. You know, they've got to rent, they've got to buy a car, they've got to deal with their cell phone, and they really get a salary, and they sort of have to deal with the reality of their circumstance in the reality fair. So there's a lot of resources. The Treasury Department is doing a lot of great things as well. There's a lot of resources out there.
I think that's an invitation for you.
I think it is. Thank you. And we're so happy to be working with CrossState Credit Union on this initiative that we have, Keystone Saves, because we all know that people don't save enough for retirement. And Keystone Saves, it's an easy way for people who work at companies without retirement plans to save for the future. So more than 2 million Pennsylvanians, and that's 40% of our private sector workforce, don't have the opportunity to save for retirement. And we know that people are 15 times more likely to save if their employer offers something. So Keystone Saves is an extremely business-friendly program that will allow employers to offer a program for employers that have 5 or more employees.
Yeah. I'll tell you, and the environment continues to change. You know, we're in kind of the second wave now with both COVID, which is, you know, on the downswing, thank God, but we also have now the rise in inflation, and you've remained open trying to work some things out to help people with financial literacy and also make something else we should talk about, make important decisions literally about their money on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. You know, financial services was considered an essential resource. So throughout the pandemic, credit unions, community banks, other financial institutions remained open. You know, our members had to pivot. Many closed their lobbies. Things changed dramatically. I think the pandemic really accelerated the move to digital banking. But, you know, on a daily basis, financial institutions, credit unions in particular, because of their people helping people philosophy, are providing financial counseling to families, small businesses, and in many cases underserved communities that have really needed it even more throughout the pandemic period.
Yeah, and we also have unemployment.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
Which is also weighing in you know, people have filed for unemployment, they're living off their savings, and literally at some point there isn't anything left.
Exactly, and that's why financial education is so vital. And again, it's not really being offered as much as it should be at home or in the schools. And so I think really the Treasury Department's been very proactive in the Commonwealth, and groups like credit unions and others have been instrumental, I think, at providing that help that families and small businesses need.
All right, another aspect of this has to do with unclaimed property.
Yes, so we get a lot of our unclaimed property, most of it from financial institutions. So in Pennsylvania, we have $4 billion of unclaimed property. $4 billion, if you can believe that. And so more often, you know, it could be from an old bank account, it could be for a non-cash check, but 1 out of 10 Pennsylvanians has unclaimed property, and the average claim is $1,500. So just a few of statistics in your listener area, Terry. So Lancaster has $57 million in unclaimed property. Dauphin County has $50 million.
Wow.
York has $47 million. And Cumberland has $35 million. Just this past year, we gave back $135 million. But I encourage everybody to go to patreasury.gov/unclaimed property, point in your name, and see if they have any unclaimed property.
Yeah, and I noticed unclaimed, the average is $1,500. Businesses are required to report unclaimed property to the Treasury after 3 years of dormancy. I never heard of that before.
And that's how financial institutions in particular, as the treasurer said, a lot of it's coming from our members and other financial institutions are involved. You know, that's passed over to the Treasury Department. And the department does a great job advertising this, but oftentimes people don't get connected and don't realize that they can access those resources that they have.
Exactly.
And you returned something like $11 million in unclaimed property last month alone.
Yes, we did. So $135 million for the year. We've just upgraded our website in June, and so I expect that $135 million to be a lot bigger this next year.
I'll tell you, you can't believe that there would be abandoned safety deposit boxes. I mean, when you think about it, but I guess that happens. I mean, you know, you pass away and your inheritors don't know that you even have it, correct?
That's exactly right. That's why it's so important to check in with your financial institutions. You should really do it once a year, and then make sure that somebody that you trust has a list of, for example, your safe deposit boxes, so that they don't come to the state. Yeah,
and 1 in 10 Pennsylvanians have unclaimed property. I mean, when you think about this in detail, it's an amazing set of statistics that obviously exist.
It is. So we really want to give this money back. It's nice to have it, and we'll protect it for everybody, but we really want to get it back to Pennsylvanians.
Thanks for coming on. Great update.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, you stay well.